49% of the country think that way. What that tells you is about half the country has the slightest clue what a gene is. So we have this deep illiteracy about biology in the country. And these are the people who are making decisions about science and technology. I would mention some recent events like Paul Brown of Georgia declaring that embryology and evolution are from the foul pit of hell as examples of this. And here's a man who's on the science committee in Congress. Also, if you look at this, there's some other interesting data there. If you look over there at the little gray box over there, look at the percent proficient with time. So in grade 4, 34% understand science well enough at that age to be considered proficient. At 8th grade, it's 30%. At 12th grade, it's 21%. Our students are getting stupider as they go through school. They're slipping and falling farther and farther behind. So we're clearly doing something wrong. And I would say that the attitudes of school administrators like Mark Ribbons, who shuts down interesting inquiry-based courses on evolution because they might be controversial, is what's contributing to this. This is something we have to fix. And it's not going to be easy because there are other problems coming up here. Okay, this is the general public. This is the results of a study that was published in Science a couple years ago, last year, I guess, on the attitudes and understanding of high school science teachers. And yeah, it's complicated. There's bars all over the place here. But the main things I would want you to know from this study is that there are a couple of scary numbers here. One is that 13% of our biology teachers are teaching creationism in the classroom. This has borne up over and over again in multiple studies. There was also another study done by Randy Moore of just Minnesota high school science teachers and found roughly the same result, that 1/6 of all high school teachers were using their public school classrooms as a platform to teach the kids about creationism and nothing but creationism. And a significant number more we're taking let's be fair, let's teach both in the classroom. So our students are getting exposed to nonsensical ideas. Another 60% of our teachers are entirely skipping evolution. This is another result of the study, is that what's happening is often, state science standards will dictate that, yes, you're supposed to teach evolution in grade 11 or whatever it is for your state. And science teachers are supposed to stick to that curriculum. Those state science standards, they get into that grade, and they know that when they talk about evolution, it's going to bring in the parents and cause a little shitstorm at every parent-teacher meeting. So they put it off to the very end of the term. Let's not get it started. Let's delay the inevitable pain until later. Which also, as a teacher, I can tell you this happens all the time. Your schedules slip, and often the things that are scheduled for that last day of class don't quite make it there. So in many cases, as has been determined in the study, 60% of the teachers, the high school teachers, are managing to just drop evolution off the face of the earth as far as their science classes go. So 13% are getting taught the wrong ideas. Another 60% aren't getting taught anything at all on this subject, which is rather disgraceful. Another thing is the blue bars there are kind of interesting too. The blue bars are telling us a slightly different stories. The blue bars are telling us how many teachers in each of these groups completed a course on evolution at some point in their college career. So if you look at the top of them, the ones where teachers are actually teaching evolutionary biology in the classroom, only about half of them have any kind of educational background in evolution at all. So it's all well and good to say, these are teachers who are on our side. Their spirit is in the right place. They want to do the right thing. They want to teach this stuff, but they don't know it either. They've never taken a course in evolutionary biology. And I know another big problem is so many people think they understand everything there is to know about evolution. Oh, it's so simple. I know about evolution. No, you don't. Evolution is really hard, okay? There's some core concepts that are pretty easy to grasp. But once you start getting into the math and the details, it balloons into something pretty difficult pretty quickly. And so that's a problem too, that many of our teachers are poorly educated on this. Now, another situation is in addition to the educational problem, where our teachers aren't doing their job properly or not being properly trained to do their job, we have the legal issues in this country. That many people argue that separation of church and state means we shouldn't teach evolution too, because after all, evolution is just another religion, right? That's the only reason we believe in it, because we're all atheists, and this is our atheist faith. So there's a concerted effort right now to legally force evolution out of the classroom. One of the people who has been promoting this idea a lot is the philosopher Michael Ruse. Michael Ruse, he's a lovely man, and he's actually done some really good things for us in the past. He's been an advocate in the courtroom against creationism. But he's got this crazy idea right now. He says that a science teacher who taught evolution without mentioning the Bible or God, but nevertheless caused a conflict within a student who was indoctrinated by creationism, is attacking that student's beliefs and therefore violating the Constitution. He's seriously making this argument that because we cause conflict in the mind of our Bible-believing students when we teach about evolution, we are violating separation of church and state, and we can't do that. He's very serious about this. He's written a number of papers on this. Here's Michael Ruse, by the way. Yes, he's an atheist, but he's got so much sympathy for the religious side, it drives me nuts. And also, here's the thing, I am contractually obligated to Michael Ruse to point out that he is a clueless gobshite every time I mention him. Because I mentioned this about him several years ago when I first criticized his idea that teaching evolution was a constitutional violation. I call him this, and now every time I meet him, and every time he writes about this issue, he brings it up again. He wrote something in the Huffington Post just 2 weeks ago, and he says, oh yeah, that Myers guy in Minnesota, he called me a clueless gobshite once. He will never forget. So anyway, I have to mention this every time I bring him up. Anyway, I have a serious question for Ruse. If we are to teach science without conflicting with some students' most devout beliefs about religion, if we only discuss those bits that are in agreement with religion, what do we have left? What could we teach? So, for example, take a look at this map. This is a map of world religions. Take all the Protestants, the Catholics, the Muslims, all the little cults and sects and factions within them, and then toss in Hindus and Buddhists and Jews and animists and all of their divisions, and there is no agreement. There is no agreement between any of these religions about anything scientific. They all have their own little ideas about this, and they will never agree with each other, because if they do, that's heresy. Now imagine a science classroom that avoided conflict with the Muslim students, the Catholic students, the Native American animist students, and the Hindu students. We are asking teachers to negotiate a minefield where the mines occupy every square centimeter of this space. And there are some really strange ideas out there. I could just pick on any of your favorite religions. If any of you are religious here, I could take your religion and I could point out all the inanity of your faith. Because that's fundamental to these religions. As they expect you to believe in wacky, weird, crazy things. But I'll just pick one example. And you'll say, this is an extreme example, but I talk to creationists all the time. This is not an extreme example at all. This is from Ray Comfort. Who's heard of Ray Comfort? Okay, yes, Banana Man. He's got a ministry called Way of the Master. He's worked with Kirk Cameron, the child star, right? who's now a grown-up, old guy who's not very bright. Anyway, he's working with them. They do a lot of advocacy of Jesus and a lot of anti-science work. This is something that Ray Comfort wrote in all seriousness. This is what he said Darwin theorized. Remember also, Ray Comfort is the guy who came out a while back with his own edition of The Origin of Species. It was distributed for free on various college campuses. So he pretends to be a Darwin authority. So he theorized, Darwin, he says, theorized that mankind evolved, male and female evolved alongside each other over millions of years. Literally, alongside each other. That there were male humans over here and there were female humans over there, and they evolved independently and separately, and none of them ever got the idea to do a little, hanky-panky. No, they all did it separately. Because that was all before the ability to have sex evolved. Yeah. And look, he says they reproduce through asexuality, which means they split in half. Now, what can you do against this kind of stupidity? Really, I mean, this is nuts.
Send him back in the sin. That's not anything we can do.
Yeah, so this is what he's saying. And I have argued with personally with Ray Comfort over this many times. This is one of his most common arguments against evolution, is he claims that evolution makes these absurd claims, which you will not find anywhere. Go ahead, read everything Darwin ever wrote. No, he never says anything this ludicrous. Sex evolved long, long ago before species. We evolved from a sexual species. So we already had the apparatus. We inherited it from our more apish ancestors. So it's just Looney Tune stuff. And imagine if Ray Comfort reproduced, and we won't speculate how, although I'm seriously thinking, well, anyway. Imagine if he reproduced, and Ray Jr. ended up in my biology class. I could not open my mouth without offending and contradicting his dogmas and implicitly belittling his fervently held beliefs. Why? Because they're fucking stupid, right? So there's absolutely nothing that a science teacher can teach if he is or she is constrained by a need to respect religious belief. So we simply cannot impose that on our teachers. Now, it's not just the people who deny evolution, though. And it's not just stupid people. Okay, Ray Comfort is the most profoundly stupid person I've ever had the mispleasure to have a conversation with. But it's also true of smart people, good people who make solid contributions to science. I'm going to pick on Ken Miller for a moment, because Ken Miller he's been a great advocate for science. He testified at the Dover trial. His talk about the fusion of the second chromosome in human ancestry is marvelous. He's really smart. He's written books that are great contributions to the battle against creationism, but he's also a devout Catholic. And this leads him to make some very bizarre claims. For instance, he claims that God manipulates evolution through quantum indeterminacy, which every physicist will just shriek at. What do you mean he doesn't? It's like he's saying that, every throw of the dice, God is sitting there and he's sort of nudging it to go whichever way he wants. Okay, so he makes that argument. But he also recently, a year or two ago, did this interview where he tries to defend this idea. He says that he's talking about a sly intervention, a completely indetectable interference by God in things like mutation rates, and specific mutations occur. Of course, it's completely indetectable, so the obvious question asked is, how does Ken Miller know that God is doing this? He can't know this. But anyway, he's got this argument. He says, there are a bunch of things that people bring up to say, well, there's something wrong with this whole argument that God favors us, because, why doesn't God let amputees grow their limbs back? And he has an answer for this. If God were to regrow limbs for amputees, the consequences, he says, would be disastrous. Yeah, tell that to all those people coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq with lost limbs, right?